Set, Tom? Good evening. Welcome to the December 14th Village Board Work Session. This meeting is called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. This afternoon we had a really lovely event. It was the inaugural walk, the formal ribbon cutting for the museum in the streets. I think there was definitely the majority of local historians that I'm familiar with, including members of the Historic Preservation Commission, the village historian, the town historian, Joseph Burton, who's not just a former police chief, but also the president of the Historical Society, Captain Craven, who is also a local historian. What historians am I missing?
We're small, but we also the daughter.
Yes, right. Dr. Hill, which is the home that Dr. Hill lived in and practiced in for many years, is a part of the tour, and the Historic Preservation Commission reached out to his family, and we were very pleased that his daughter, Devora, I believe was her name, Devora Smith, was able to join us. And actually she recorded it and she did a Facebook Live feed on it. So we've got some nice footage. And Miguel Hernandez was fully decked out in costume and led us on a mini version of the tour. And then we culminated at the community center. And it was really just a lovely afternoon. And it's a very exciting project. The newest terrific reason to go to our downtown. So if you haven't noticed the signs, I'm sure you have, but there's now maps that are available, and those are going to start. You're going to start seeing those not just at the community center, but at some of our downtown businesses as well. So, and that the electronic version is available on our website if you want to get a sneak peek before you get a chance to get the brochure. Any other announcements? All right, then Interim Manager Fraley, we'll get started.
Ready? Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Board. Tonight, we have back-to-back presentations, both by our planner, Ms. Lynn Brooks-Obney. The first is on a follow-up proposal that is the result of various internal meetings and a couple of public presentations by Mr. Kevin DeVarca and his housing needs assessment. Lynn is going to go over the details of that proposal with you this evening in hopes of getting the approval to execute a contract after a resolution at the next legislative session on the 21st. Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here this evening, members of the board.
Gotta push the button. No, it has to be up.
Oh, sorry.
It's a surprising position to be in, yes.
Okay, sorry.
You got it now.
Okay.
Welcome to the table.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. So we started this conversation a few weeks ago about a housing needs assessment to go around and basically it would be a comprehensive discussion of our existing housing conditions, the economic and planning context, and how we can move forward in a positive way. We have lots of stuff we're looking for information on that this could provide data on. Talking about updates to our code, talking about updates to affordable housing. This is going to provide some basic demographic, socioeconomic composition, understanding of owner-occupied, age of housing, and how we use it. The goal is to have about a 5-month study, and if you guys are okay with it, and we could get the go-ahead to move forward, we would start in early January and we would commence sometime in May. The consultant that we're looking at has made it really clear that as a small business owner, he can't make the project go on forever because he has other projects and a small staff. So for him, it's really key that we're able to be on schedule and we're willing to go with a timeline of about 5 months, which is about what it's going to take. So, the answers from the study will help us basically with understanding how to create and edit our current comprehensive plan, our zoning code, with respect to enforcement, zoning text, our land use approval processes, how we could basically be more progressive with respect to housing, and Austining could essentially hopefully be a model for other communities to follow. Do you guys have any questions or comments or want more detailed information from me?
Please, go ahead.
If I may interject, one thing that we went over in the proposal, which I think would be of
Yes.
interest.
Your mic's not on, Paul.
Right. One of those nights, I guess. If Lynn, if you could possibly expand on what we discussed with Mr. DeVerker with regard to public input and presentation as we go along the process. I think the folks that are going to want to be involved or be knowledgeable about the process are going to want to attend the public meeting. So what is the village's intent with this consultant with regard to public input and public presentation as he goes through the development of the finished product?
So, as part of the proposed scope of work, he's looking to, in conjunction with our staff, the village board, and all of our other land use boards, he's looking to conduct 10 stakeholder interviews, and with various, we'd have to determine this as we start the project, the stakeholders in the project. Most of them would be what seem like the obvious ones: business owners, affordable housing tenants, developers, planners, like the usual scope, but then we would also expand that out. There would also be 5 roundtable discussions that would definitely include village representatives, community organizations, property owners, landlords, tenants, village representatives. There would be only one public presentation, or at least that's what we budgeted for, and it would be to discuss the findings of what happened in the visioning workshops that with the stakeholder interviews and the roundtable discussions, and then to basically engage the idea is to engage the public in a collaborative planning process, so we get their input so that we can move forward with our study.
Yeah, well, one of the things when we talk about the stakeholders, we had explored whether it made sense for the village and the town to undertake a housing needs assessment together. And speaking with Kevin, it really there's no economy of scale or logic to doing that because we have different zoning codes and things of that sort. But if I think it would be beneficial if one of the roundtables could be to invite the town council and the town planning board members and members of the town to find out what do they have in the pipeline, what do they envision, and to bring them up to speed in what we're looking at and exploring in the village. So if that wasn't already considered one of the stakeholders, I think it's an important one to be part of this process.
Okay, I will add that.
Others with comments? Yes, please, John.
Yeah, I guess my only concern would be is that we're only having one sort of open public presentation. I mean, I can recognize that there's only so much time, but I think that general public engagement can be a good thing. And, I don't know if that's something that the board would consider, maybe adding another event into the mix, just because I think it's, I mean, the parties that are going to be most affected by the study and the information obviously are all going to be at the table, across the board. I think that's great. But I think anytime there's an opportunity for public input, I think that's helpful. So otherwise, I'm pretty comfortable with the proposal as I've seen it, and
The detail.
kind of the redo of the presentation was clearly much more expansive. So anyway, I put that out there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to necessarily not go forward with this because I think time is of the essence. But I think that public engagement is really important, and I know that from my experience with the comprehensive plan that was something that was very beneficial. And as much about taking public input as educating the public about the benefits of the information we're gathering and the things that it can do. So that's just my suggestion.
One thing that occurred to me is that we've talked a lot about communication and having an ongoing series of information and communication. And one of the big topics that that I'd like us to focus on, and that Rika and I have had conversations about, is housing. So perhaps we can think of some creative ways to update the public and engage the public and find more people who may want to participate in some of these stakeholder interviews, because if we've got 10 of them, they're obviously not going to take place all at the same time. So perhaps we can be following up or leading into each one with some further information on what's being gathered and what's being explored and what's being, who's participating.
Well, yeah, the goal isn't that they're going to actually happen all at the same time, but that
Certainly.
the first will
Yeah.
inform the second, and we might find that during the initial conversations, there's actually more stakeholders than we thought, so we can have the opportunity to bring them to the table, which we wouldn't have if we had them all at the same time.
Right. So spreading out the 10 stakeholder interviews with 5 rounds of discussions actually gives us a lot of opportunities to report on each of those. Perhaps we can report at our public meetings and then follow up with some documentation that can be available on the website, even if it's just a brief update. There was a stakeholder meeting that was held, and they explored this. For information about the next one, reach out to us here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's a strong communication plan that you know,
Yeah.
that may suffice, you know, as opposed to having, you know, an additional public meeting or other meetings where people would come. I think it's important that as we accumulate information and knowledge over time, that the public have the chance to see, you know, the minutes and the debrief and kind of what happens during those meetings. I think that would be really helpful. And that we need to really get the word out to let everybody know that this is happening. And, you know, we could always leave it open for public comment as the process goes on. People are always
Right.
welcome to, they could come to any legislative session and speak about it. I mean, I suppose, you know, at the end of a legislative session, you know, that certainly would be a topic that would be a time for people to speak, so.
And we don't want to limit people to have to come in person to either the stakeholder. I mean, people can
No,
email us and they will, but
they
we
could
can
communicate
encourage
that
that,
in
yeah.
writing or email or in, you know, any form.
And just as you talk about engaging people, engaging the public, what is that software that the village paid for? My Street Space?
Yeah, we're not paying for that anymore.
Oh, we're not paying for that anymore. Okay, I thought if we were still paying for that platform, that would be a chance to.
It would have been. That was exactly what it was intended to do. It
Okay.
just didn't really work out.
Okay, all right.
So can I?
Comments, please?
Yeah.
Go for it.
So it seems that we have about 15 meetings, so to speak, and some of the stuff that you guys were talking about. No, I saw that in my little one.
Okay.
I know it was 10 and then it's 5, so about 15 and plus the public. But where is I guess it will be more like a coordination and where these meetings are going to be taking place, and if. You know, we're talking about a communication. We're talking about, you know, people engaging some of the, you know, either via email after seeing. What happens if we make those meetings here and we have the capability to have them be live in the stream? That would be public engagement, I believe, where anybody can see that meeting the next day or following through at the same time. Would that be a possibility? That
Yes,
this
so I guess the
board-
question to Kevin is there any reason why, if we're in a room that's wired for television, why we couldn't have at least a portion of them available for people to watch, if anybody wants to sit through watching a meeting?
I'm not sure how you know what's the length of the meeting either, but maybe not the beginning, or maybe the beginning, the middle, and because we are going to be communicating some of
Yeah.
the information, and we are going to be feeding back to the people, but the public may not be able to understand what we're talking about. So if they go back to the link or to some of the meetings, that they can be able to understand it and have that happen and what we're talking about at the end of the day. So.
Even if it's just 2 or 3 of them. And did he talk about, and forgive me, I don't remember reading it, if the locations were, the type of location was identified? Like, should it all be in the same place, or does it not matter because it's different people? We can have some here, some at the library, some at the community center, or some even, firehouse, or does it matter?
We didn't identify them yet, but from past experience, you want to generally go out to the public. You get more response when you go
Right.
to locations where they are.
You can
so
do like
like
the
churches,
library, yeah.
community groups, like a library. You want to make yourself accessible if you want to get their opinion, since they're making time in their schedule to, offer their time and thoughts and
Right.
as part of the process.
Trustee Casada, what we can do, I mean, the meetings have been more often than not uploaded the morning after the work session, and the public sessions are live, obviously,
No,
police
no.
court. So there won't be a downtime or a real lag that would, I think, interrupt the public education component of his presentations. What we can investigate tomorrow is maybe we'll talk to Craig together, because we're meeting with them anyway, and maybe we can, while he's burning it, we can burn a snippet from the meeting, and we can make a collection of a standalone housing needs assessment presentations. So whenever Lynn presents on it, or whenever Kevin presents on it, we can have those all isolated from a full public meeting, where someone doesn't have to go through a 2.5 or 3 hour meeting to hear 10 minutes worth of housing needs assessment information. So we'll investigate something like that, maybe.
Okay. And what was the price again?
It's
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, did you want to speak? Okay. Right now it's 50,000, and we added a contingency in case things go long. We have to have an additional public meeting or two to make it 60 grand. But
His proposal is for 50.
it's for the contingency is 60. So yeah, so it's 50, and we added a contingency in case we ended up going
So
long.
that addresses your issue, John. So
Additional-
if we
Yes,
add,
that-
if we add
The,
it,
the
If there's
10,000, the 10,000 is called out in the proposal as contingency for additional meetings not identified in his proposal. So if we do just that, or it warrants that, then that's the money we'll draw from, so we don't have to come back and take it from our operating budget.
But as presented, this is 50?
Yeah, yes.
okay.
Thank you. Rika, we're reviewing the same, we received this, thank you for joining us. We received this like a couple weeks ago, the Kevin Dworka proposal. Do you have any questions?
I called Lynn.
Yes.
I knew about the contingency and the
Button there.
meetings. Oh, yes, sorry. I'm always leaving that. I know. Sorry, Tom. No, I saw it, and Paul and I and Lynn and I spoke about the contingency more than a couple of meetings. It's going to be what's not in his control. I thought it was pretty clear, the proposal and the questions.
Yes.
We went through it.
One thing that you missed that is sort of in your bailiwick is John was talking about making sure that that we have more public meeting, or that we have more public engagement, and we talked about the importance of pushing this out through more regular communications and the variety of ways that we can do that to update people on the meetings that have happened and what's been talked about. And with 15 meetings, that's a lot of opportunities to follow up and keep people informed. So it's an
So I
important
think,
component.
sorry. Now that you're having also some of what Jamie's doing with the constant contact with messaging, could be helpful to get it out, to curate information with the links as you described when I walked in. So, and I think these type of things usually go like, meetings occur, you learn from the first one, what works, what doesn't, you schedule the next one, what works, what doesn't, and by the time you get down the line, are the same people showing up from one place to the other? Is that what you want? Do you want to narrow? Do you want to expand? I mean, but I think that's his expertise. When I spoke to, I actually called Kevin. When I spoke to him, I get the sense that that's his expertise, is knowing how to get this kind of stuff. It's not my expertise. It's, how to corral everybody and get to everybody in a professional way. I mean, I think that's what he does really well. I mean, that's the impression I have. So, but you've been speaking to him more than I have. But
So then this is going to be a resolution for us to take a look at next week to authorize?
So I'm guessing that we could mean to authorize to go into contract? Okay. Okay.
I just have one question about distributing information. So if we mention, I'm just facing Paul, I could go this way. If we mention we hire, which we just did, if people want to speak to Kevin directly, did you guys figure out protocols for that so that we don't have lots of people all of a sudden, or one person many times, or I think that protocol I'm just concerned about. People have his name. Do they reach out to him directly when they have questions? Not us, the public. I mean, I think you need, it's not for me to say. I'm saying that's something you might want to just sort of clarify before we,
Okay, that's
and maybe it's great for him that people want to deal with him directly. It's not for me to say, but I'm just pointing out that that might be something you might want to work out in
so
advance.
in the following up on what you said about he's the
Right.
expert. I think he's going to kind of tell us who he wants his stakeholders to be and the contact that he wants with those certain stakeholders. Because right before you walked in, we were talking about just that separate stakeholder lists for the land use boards, et cetera.
Right, that's what he was talking about.
And we'll kind of take his lead on who he
Okay.
wants to engage with, and then we'll try to facilitate what he wants.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
So I
Lynn.
think we're going to shift the items on the agenda around a little bit.
Yeah.
Paul, if you wouldn't mind giving Lori Lee that mic and then moving the water pitcher, and then you can have this mic. So Lori Lee can speak
Okay.
when it's her turn. I don't want her to be left out. So. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. So I handed out an updated agenda, which indicates the last topic being the Hudson Valley Greenway Grant. This is a grant that Lynn developed on behalf of the Village of Ossining, the Town of Ossining, and the Town of Newcastle. So we're going to take things a little out of order since she's already up here at the dais. Thank you, Lynn.
Well, I think you gave me too much credit. I think I didn't. I was just part of the group. I wasn't the one who developed it, but thank you. So there was a grant. There was a team effort from the Town of Ossining, the Village of Ossining, and Newcastle earlier this year to apply for a Greenway grant from the Hudson Valley Greenway Conservancy. And the intent was to connect the open space and existing trails, that there's currently a lot of north-south connections for pedestrians and bicyclists, but there is a lack of east-west connections. So the idea was to really enhance those connections in an east-west way and allow for full circulation within the trailways and, as I so nicely put it, create a sort of emerald necklace for the region. They put it in their PR release, so. We'll,
I like it.
But that is the ultimate goal. So right now, the town has proposed an intermunicipal agreement with the Village of Ossining and the Town of Newcastle. And they asked, as part of the grant activities, if the respective planning staff from all of those municipalities could provide in-kind services to the grant so that they could get the grant. And altogether, with all the planners involved, there's about 5 or 6 of us from across Newcastle, the town, and the village, and some clerical stuff. And we were able to provide a match of approximately $45,000 in our time to help them with the grant. So basically, the intermunicipal agreement would be to engage and to accept the grant and participate fully.
And the grant, if I may, Lynn,
Go for
the
it.
grant is for the study itself and not
yes.
anything to do with
Yeah,
the
they're not gonna implement it.
implementation.
There's no
So that's
implementation.
why the in-kind services are strictly existing staff consulting services. So that's where Lynn is asking for the ability for me to execute the IMA with the town of Newcastle and town of Ossining. So we can make available staff services in conjunction with their staff services as the in-kind service to match what we're going to get in the grant from the Greenway.
Anyone want to comment on this?
So, did we get the grant, or?
The
Yeah.
town
Okay,
got
so
the
we-
grant.
so
The
we-
town was the
so
lead.
we got the grant.
Yes,
Okay.
the town was the lead.
Okay, and so they want to engage us to kind of do this holistic, all Ossining kind of thing, I guess, sounds like, right?
It's not, well, it's Ossining, Newcastle, yeah, and town.
Okay,
But yes, to look at it as a whole way. So for instance, like looking at how people get from the Ossining Railroad Station to, say, like the old Croton Aqueduct Trail. Like how like connecting stuff that seems simple to us, but might not seem simple to the visitor who's looking to walk the trail. You know, it's also got the North County Trailway, the Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway, to create the connections specifically east-west that aren't there, and to really improve the north-south ones.
So the match is basically in-kind services through all three municipalities. So the IMA would allow all three municipalities to provide these in-kind services as the match for the grant money.
So to get the in-kind services, they basically took our hourly pay rate and matched it with the number of hours and gauged how long it would take us to help them with the planning work.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
What's the time frame of the whole project?
I believe it was short. I thought it was like.
Do we have it in front of us, or is it online
I was
somewhere?
looking at it.
We actually say it. I don't think we actually discussed it. And it's not set forth in the IMA. I don't think we actually discussed it when we were talking about the grant in general. But the goal would seem like it's 6 months to a year at the most. It's to design a plan. It's not to design the project or to implement it.
So what happens after that?
Well, then
The
we would
design and
obviously
then
have
comes-
to, we would have to obviously seek additional grant funding to pursue that further. And the type of grant funding would probably be dependent on what comes out of the proposal and the plan, and how the village and the town of
How
Newcastle
much
and
was the
town of
grant again?
Austining.
45.
45?
45. Our match was, 45.
The total
I think
grant is
Forty-
45, no?
I think I thought it was, for some reason I think it's 30. That we got, with the original grant that we sought was 40, but our match, it's 30.
Sure.
30,000.
So they're giving us 30,000 and we're contributing 45,000 in kind. Just the
That was
village is
ours.
contributing?
No, it's,
Okay, all three
yeah,
municipalities.
between all three municipalities and the time.
Okay.
And how much actual, is there like an hourly figure, like how many hours you're looking at dedicating
All the planning staff agreed to dedicate 80 hours.
for the whole project?
Mhm.
Okay.
I could pass it around if you want to look. If that
Oh, it
helps
has the
clarify-
breakdown.
Yes, if that helps clarify everything.
Oh, I see.
So, yes, they were looking for 40, and we got 30.
So that might answer your time frame, because 80 hours must equal something if you assume X number per week, and
That's 80
they stop
hours.
and go. It's 80 man-hours, yeah.
That's
Right.
No,
among all
well,
three
no,
municipalities.
80 hours,
per-
each planner agreed to put in 8 hours.
80
Oh, so
hours.
it's 240.
Yeah.
I assume.
Well, no,
You mean
it's
each
more than that.
municipality?
It's more than that.
It's like
There's
45,
like 7 or
it's
8
like
lines.
45.
We had
It's
two people
like
from
there's
Newcastle.
like 5 planners.
3 people from Newcastle. Wow.
Yeah, they have the environmental
Okay, and then you and your staff generally.
Yes, so 400 hours, about.
Oh, it looks like now I see what everybody else gets paid by the hour. That's not too bad.
Let's make a copy of that. Let me use my iPhone on that. Did you add this Greenway thing to the agenda? Is that the new part of the
Yes, yeah.
agenda?
Yeah.
Because I was with Dana about an hour ago, and she was actually asking if we're voting on this, and I didn't know what she was talking about. So
No,
now
not
I know
voting.
what she's talking about.
I told her tonight we were going to present, and next Wednesday we would vote.
Oh,
I'm sorry, we would talk about it tonight, get the approval to
to
execute.
then go.
To add a
Oh, okay.
resolution.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time I had that deer in the headlight look, don't worry.
All right. Any other, now that I think I have a better understanding
Yeah.
about this, I'm certainly supportive of it. It's a wonderful project, and it
Yeah.
sounds like it's, we didn't have to take the lead on it, and we're happy that you're ready, willing, and able to contribute your services and the services of your staff to be able to help make it a success. I think it's great. And the train station is here in Ossining, so I think that's going to be part of the push to bring
Yeah.
people through. And, hikers and cyclists that come right through the village of Ossining and enjoy the greenway and enjoy the aqueduct. I mean, it's a real benefit to us.
So would you like to put a resolution on for next?
Please.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. All right.
Sure. What? What's so funny?
So,
Okay, that includes Lynn's presentations, unless there was any other questions relative to her two presentations this evening.
I know Lynn needs to get to the planning board. The next
Oh.
topic is actually related to Lynn. I'm going to reference a meeting that you were at, but if you need to.
No, I have it covered actually, so.
Okay, then, well, I just have a quick update, if I may, unless, interim manager, you wanted to interject something, or can I jump into the next update? Okay. So we've talked a lot about housing this year, so I just wanted to update folks. You've heard the name Jeff Smith. He's a special counsel that we've engaged to assist us with really two paths of exploring how we can better achieve our housing goals, particularly a potential for expanding affordable housing opportunities on the one path, which is what John Codman and I are working with, representing the board on that effort, and the Landlord-Tenant Relations Council and Quantel Basemore and REAC 11 are the subcommittee working on that. I'll just quickly say my update from Jeff with Landlord-Tenant Relations was just that there's been some exploration about the potential for expanding membership and the composition of the Landlord-Tenant Relations Council, and he said that there you have the flexibility to be able to expand it to 9 members instead of 7, which would be 3 landlords, 3 tenants, and 3 neithers, which right now there's 3, and 1 neither landlord nor tenant, which is a similar composition, if not the same composition, that the Westchester Rent Regulation Guidelines Board has, and is sometimes called into question if there's a tendency for the one neutral person to be sort of co-opted by one side or the other, and that's a criticism that that board has heard sometimes, and having a broader representation of the community in those spots could be beneficial to providing more of a neutral voice in mediation and efforts by the council. So that was the one update that he provided me with, and I know that Rika and Quantel will have more updates in the future on that, unless you want to chime in on something related at this point. No. Okay, then the meetings that have been happening, I'll let folks know. Jeff Smith has been reaching out to stakeholders, and our effort is to hear from and engage with all the stakeholders in the community who have anything to do with housing, and that is affordable housing advocates, including IFCA, community members who have expressed a concern and an interest in providing tenant protections and expanding affordable housing. And Jeff Smith has been having meetings with small groups as well as just one-on-one meetings with some of these key stakeholders. Last Friday, John and I participated in a meeting with a half a dozen landlords and landlord representatives. The first hour was me, John, and Jeff talking to the landlords and about the potential for an effort to create affordable housing set-asides within existing buildings. Our existing affordable housing program, like what exists in many communities, is designed to provide a 10% set-aside for new construction buildings. What's being explored is would there be an opportunity to create a set-aside of affordable housing, and instead of doing it at the 80% area median income, which is what we currently have with our new construction, doing these set-asides at 60% area median income. So what's being explored right now is a 5% set-aside at 60% area median income. It was a very interesting conversation. The second half of the meeting, we asked Lynn Brooks-Avni and Karen Dottori of IFCA to join us because in the idea that was first being understood and considered by the landlords really didn't take into account what the parameters are of our existing affordable housing program. It's always best if we don't have to reinvent the wheel, and if we can modify and expand an existing program that that functions very well as it is. That's really the best way to approach I think this and most projects in municipal government, rather than creating a new bureaucracy. And so we spent a good amount of time talking about what is our affordable housing program, how do you do the qualifications, what does this mean, What is 60% area median income? What if the source of income is Section 8? What does that mean? There were a lot of questions, and there was a lot of back and forth, some interesting exchanges. I'll ask Trustee Codman, with that smirk on your face, is there anything you'd like to reflect on from that meeting?
You know, I mean, I thought it was a good open conversation. I think it was a really good start. I think that you know, property owners, you know, aren't really sure what they're wading into. I think that I think we established some rough boundaries around where everybody's coming from, and I think that's important. I think we found a little bit of common ground, and I thought that was helpful. I think that there was really a lack of understanding of our current housing program, and I think Lynn and Karen's presence were very helpful in kind of helping them really understand what it is we're trying to accomplish, and you know, and what the 10% set aside means, and how it's structured, and how it's put together, and how the rents are established. I think that was a real education for them, and I think I think because IFCA is obviously an advocate, but they're also a landlord, you know, I think they kind of had some understanding of what that means and what that entails. So I was certainly encouraged by the first meeting. I look forward to the next one, and we'll see where it goes.
I would ask that, just thinking of stakeholders, you had mentioned Section 8, that if possible, if Marilyn could be there, because she could really explain to landlords what Section 8 is and what it's not. And I know there is a big
There were certainly some questions
yes.
about
Yes,
Section 8.
yes.
Yes.
We realized halfway through the meeting that it became a lot of there were a lot of questions about Section 8, and in hindsight, we wish that we had invited Marilyn initially to attend, and you're right. That's exactly what needs to happen.
Okay.
I don't know. It seemed as though she sort of came at the end, like as we were kind of leaving the room.
Yeah.
I think she may have had another commitment and just couldn't.
Yeah, no,
couldn't-
we didn't realize it was going to turn into there were going to be so many questions about Section 8 in particular, because
Right.
affordable housing set-asides are for people regardless of what their source of income is.
Right.
But there's so much misunderstanding about Section 8 that it's an important opportunity to take advantage of while all of the landlords are engaged, so that they can really understand what it means.
And I think it was an education for them to, you know, I think we were able to. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I think it was helpful to help them really understand what's happening.
Was
what it really means.
was quality of housing talked about as well?
Very much
Yes,
so.
absolutely.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
That's also an important factor.
Yes.
That's one too.
They actually brought it up.
Interesting.
Not all of them.
Okay.
It was quite a mix of representatives of the sizes of properties that would be included. And to their credit, they've reached out to a number of other landlords to say, look, we think this might be a good idea. Come on board, because the village is only going to consider if it's going to be a significant amount of additional units that would be brought to the affordable housing program. So they recognize that if this is going to work, it's got to be, it's got to be worth everybody's effort to undertake it. And I'm pleased that there are as many people engaged in trying to figure out if this can work as there are. Any other questions on it?
Yeah, it's just I guess more like a general question. What do you think the time frame will be for something to come to get a better idea and what is going on?
You have thoughts on that, please?
Well,
I don't have a good answer, so I'd love to hear it.
I think that, you know, we had our first meeting. You know, ETPA is still on the table, and I think that I think me, for myself personally, I certainly want to get them back to the table early next year and see if we can make some progress in January to see if we can get you know, close to kind of creating a framework to put something together. I mean, you know, maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think that I think it's important that we figure out if we're going there or not, and you know, everybody's committing time and energy into this, and I think we need to make some significant progress in January for me to feel like this is going to be a worthwhile endeavor, and I think everybody needs to want to do it. So
Fair enough.
that's my personal timeline. I'm not speaking for the mayor or the landlords or anybody else. That's just what I would like to see. You know, I understand we got Thanksgiving, we got holidays and all that other stuff, and people begin to step out. But I think we, you know, early next year we really need to. And that would be something I would want to sit down with Jeff and say, hey, you know, can we put a timetable together to figure out where we're going to go here? So
Yeah, so it was a valuable education and sort of developing an understanding and finding some common ground. But we also all left with homework assignments of information to gather about what their current vacancies are and who are their current tenants, and so because eventually we'll get down to what are the logistics of, if we're going to have 5% set aside, let's say that's, you know, 5 units in your building, then do you have 5 units? Is that reflective of the makeup of the kind of apartments that you have available? So there'd have to be some sort of, like, there's a lot of
Correct.
contractual details to figure out if it's going to be implemented. So
Okay.
that's the next time we meet, we should be further along on the path. And if
Then I'll ask that question
if
again.
people are
after
if
that.
people are really, you know, vested in it and really want to see it happen, then we will be, and they'll come back with some real information. So
Definitely. Okay. No, thank you.
thank you. Interim Manager Fraley.
Thank you again. Third item on the agenda this evening, Tom Warren is with us this evening. Every year we have property owners that, for some reason or another, have not paid their water or sewer bills to the finance department, and after various administrative attempts to make collection on the same that are unsuccessful, it results in what Tom was going to explain to you tonight, where those fees get rolled over into their property tax roll. Tom.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Board of Trustees. Pretty much covers it. It's my annual visit with a list of the unpaid water bills that New York State law allows the village to collect them if they're not paid by putting them on the tax roll. We send the homeowners and businesses reminder letters throughout the year, and in November we send them one final letter advising them that if they don't pay by the first week in December, it does get added onto the tax roll. So this is a request for a resolution authorizing the submitted list to be added onto the property tax roll in 2017. We did have one final last-minute payment, so the amount changed slightly. But, you know, the good news is, if it is any good news, the list is about $23,000 less than it was last year. But it's still a substantial sum. But it's great, you know, we're grateful that we have this means available to us under state law to allow us to collect it by adding it onto the tax roll.
I'm just curious. Never mind. It's not tax deductible though. It's not a mortgage.
is not
even though
tax
it's a lien against
deductible,
the property.
but,
Okay, all right, that's fine. I was trying to figure out why somebody would do this other than just being unable to pay their bill. But what would
Part
be
of
the
it may
financial
be
motivation?
sometimes if they have an escrow account, the mortgage company picks it up. You know, of course, you know, they're going to pass it back onto the homeowner. You know, other people is, you know, they're just trying to put it off as long as possible. So
There's a fine involved, though, right?
there's
fee?
penalties throughout the year, so you know it's
Okay.
what's the dollar amount?
the final amount is $451,156.40.
So, and you said we were able to. So you said somebody just sort of paid off 20,000. So you're saying that there are
No. It's about
less.
$23,000
Less
less
than
than
last
it was a year ago.
okay.
you know-
So last year was 470.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So basically there's $450,000 of unpaid water bill and
And
sewer,
penalties.
and that includes the penalties. Okay.
Are these residential, commercial,
little bit of both?
Both.
Majority one way or the other?
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to tell because, many of these properties that might be on some of the main streets are a combination of business on the lower floors and residential on the upper.
And of the 470 whatever thousand from last year that we put as liens against the properties, have we been paid much of that?
Yes, because it gets added onto the people's tax bill, and the tax bills are pretty much paid.
Oh, all right,
Or we hound them.
all right. So it's just
Goes into in rem.
a year of delay
Correct.
of $450,000.
So based on that,
Fees.
if I may,
with the
do we ever see a correlation between non-ratepayers also being tax delinquent folks?
I talked to Dale about that actually too, because I said it's our usual cast of characters, but it's far more expansive than that because, like Thomas was explaining, if you have a mortgage and the mortgage is retaining escrow, it throws your escrow balance off, but the mortgage company will always get enough to cover that escrow. So it's really bookkeeping. It's kind of it's an odd way to go about your household budget, but some people choose to do it this way for some
Well, I will
strange-
say, I'm somebody who, just to give you an insight into my own financing, I like to auto pay as many of my bills as possible, and Tom knows this, that I have now set up my water bill to automatically draw when it's due. It'll just take it right out of my checking account, so that bill that comes like every 3 months, and it's a different amount each month, is just taken care of automatically for people who might not be good at opening their mail and following up with a paper check or paying online, so.
And it would certainly help with cash flow if people paid their water bill, but as I said, I'm thankful that we have this means to enforce
Yes.
collection.
Thank you. I don't think we've ever explored it in this much detail, so thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Nice stuff.
That concludes the regular agenda items. There is a resolution at the bottom there that I'll try to explain in some detail because I sat through it for my first time in my interim manager capacity. Every year, POMCO is our medical insurance provider comes and makes presentation to Ms. McMahon, our personnel director, in conjunction with our stop loss insurance. As you know, we are self-insured, but we carry this stop loss insurance to prevent the village from being exposed to extraordinary medical costs for individuals. And that does happen, unfortunately, but it does happen to employees from time to time. I think just from my memory of the meeting, there's 2 or 3 extraordinary cases that exceed the threshold that when the stop loss kicks in per year over the last few years. So it's basically an actuary's analysis of what we cover. And below is the summary of POMCO's a broker for this insurance, and below is the summary of the recommendation that's endorsed by our personnel department to get us, to cover us most appropriately based on historical numbers for our medical coverage for our employees.
Okay. So we're
Okay.
gonna,
Thank you.
it says upcoming resolution has today's date, but it's gonna be on our agenda for next week,
Agenda
right?
for next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'll correct that.
No, I think, Paul, did you have an update for us on something?
I can update you on a couple things.
Okay.
Next week, under continuing business, I hope to have a defined proposal from Mazer Engineering regarding the roundabout for construction document and construction management phase. I've been back and forth with that group, and we'll talk about that at that time. That's moving along, and I think it's with the intent of having a resolution to execute a contract with him in the first legislative meeting in January, so we can get right to work through the winter for summer construction.
We recall. Okay. Yes?
Were we going to talk about on-street parking, or was?
I don't have anything prepared to discuss tonight.
Okay.
Do you,
All right. So
go ahead.
So the-
Introduce it so we can
okay,
be ready
okay,
for next
all
week
right,
and we
okay,
can
so-
add it to continuing business.
So there's been a couple of complaints. The whole Cortland Ridge, Claremont Gardens, the overnight parking. We've received a couple of emails regarding overnight parking. Persons have the overnight parking permit, and then they're still being ticketed.
Overnight parking waiver? Yeah.
Overnight parking.
Because we can't permit
waiver,
on-street
yes.
parking. Thank you.
Overnight parking waiver and persons being ticketed. We do know that the management has decided to charge people for additional spaces, but essentially there's not enough parking because they just have more cars than the property was designed for. So hopefully, I know we've been talking about it, but maybe we can come up with a temporary solution until maybe we tell the management company that you have to provide more parking.
Well, and actually, that was brought up early last year, and when a previous village manager and myself, actually, we had an interaction with some of the management people in that complex, and at that time, they were looking into doing something or bring it up to the next property, so to speak, and see if they can work something out so they can add additional parking. So they were willing to do something like that. So I'm not sure what conversations you had, but that's something, as far as I know, that they were looking into it. So I don't know if they approached the property next door of them, but
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to some residents, and they've given me a little bit back and forth about, I don't know if Cablevision was actually willing to rent out the extra lot, but I only bring this up to say, generally speaking, when people get overnight parking waivers, the assumption is I get the sticker, I park here, I won't get a ticket, and so when they get the ticket, and parking really seems to be like a real big issue around there. Then it comes back to us like, oh, I don't want to live in Ossining anymore because now one resident said to me, I can't leave my house. I didn't even know there was this restaurant downtown because normally when I come home I just park because I don't want to leave my parking space because it's going to be such an issue finding a parking space. Now I used to live there. I know it's an issue. So if there's something that we can do temporary about expanding on-street parking overnight, temporary until we try to find a solution, or either facilitate the solution from the village, because I know it's becoming more and more of a concern.
Wasn't one of the
You're right.
one of the things that happened last year was the people that live near there complained that they don't want any more parking that's blocking up their driveways and all that, and where they live, so that there simply isn't enough parking for. When you hear both of those people talking, I don't mean two people, I mean the groups, and the management company, that woman was there from the management company, right? About it, explaining, I guess, her point of view. It seems like when you add those two up, there's simply not enough parking. The homeowners, or I guess they're homeowners right next to that, their drivers are being blocked because cars are parked like halfway in so they can't pull out, and if somebody has like a get-together, there's no room. So I guess it's just an overall, everybody in that square footage is being
I think the matter that you're
trouble.
the matter that you're recollecting last year, in conjunction with that, was the signage on the road did not mirror what the ordinance says. So when we went and put the signs in the proper place, there was there were some questions about why we were locating the signs there, and we had to explain that they were relocated improperly at one time, and we righted that ship, which did provide more parking. The first time this issue came up for the residents on Van Cortlandt for the overnight, then was afforded when the sign was not located in the correct place. And it's clear that the signs being relocated caused issue or concern that maybe driveways to the single-family residences on that road across the street from the development may be compromised, and they were concerned with that. And that's, I think, what you're referring to.
Bottom line seems to be there's lots of people, not enough parking. I mean, I could speak in
Lots of
more,
cars.
in more eloquent terms, but that's what I'm sort of getting here. So what would be a temporary solution, for example?
I'm thinking like Van Cortlandt, even if you go I don't know how far Van Cortlandt you could go, but just extending. I mean, again, you shouldn't block anyone's driveway, but there's sidewalk. There's just taking up as high as you can, like.
We had discussed this earlier, and without going there and actually looking at it and having the conversation, there are a lot of curb cuts for the houses as you work your way up the hill, more than there is as you get down towards the bottom to the cul-de-sac there, which name escapes me. And then Van Cortlandt, from a village perspective, goes up to Claremont. Then it becomes a town road, so we can't really legislate that without the town's input, at least. So.
Well, the town has no on-street parking in the whole town.
Right, correct. And you can't, again, technically, we don't either without the waiver, right? So, if going up the road, going up Van Cortlandt on the right side where the sidewalk is located now, the lane width does not permit both sides of the road. So, correct and correct.
I mean, we had the police chief looking at that as well, if my recollection is, and it was some of the side, the view while you're driving, even if we do something like that, it was not permitted.
Towards the bottom of the hill, we
Right.
talked about sight distance around the Cablevision parking area, and as you approach the radius for the intersection with 9. So we, it turns out that when we actually went and relocated the signs as the original ordinance from 30, 40 years ago, really did work well with sight distances, etc. So we went back to the way it was originally, and then that works.
So I think the question would be, is there a way to go up the hill any further than we have?
Yeah.
And how many spots would we gain if we did that, and what would be the downside?
That's what Trustee Bazemore and I had discussed earlier, and that was earlier today, and I had not gone to
Okay.
Van Cortlandt between then and now. So
Is it a good idea? Does it make sense for us to add this to next week's meeting, continuing business, to get an update of if this is worth pursuing, or what it would mean if we wanted to?
yeah, I think what we discussed was I was gonna pull on the police chief's ear and take a ride up there and see if it's a worthy effort.
I would assume we can't tell a management company that they have to supply more parking spots.
Well,
I mean, if they have X number of apartments, or they could not rent to as many people, I guess, would be the other way. Like, so, I guess they could limit of living.
they have a site plan, and I'm sure they have a pro forma.
Right.
And when they want to do things of a large scale, that's where they need village approvals. That's when discussions like that can be entered.
Well, it just so happens that the company that owns this is at the table discussing affordable housing expansion. So, I mean, it's somebody that we know and who has invested a significant amount of money into the property. So maybe that's a conversation that could be had as well. It hasn't been the same owner for that long,
Yeah.
so.
If units have more than one vehicle, there might be a way to restripe for tandem parking. I mean, there are lots of opportunities
yeah.
for maximizing. I know I lived in a complex at one point that
Yeah,
offered
that's right.
tandem parking. If you
Yeah.
are living in the same unit and you have two cars,
Yeah, the husband and
just
wife can switch
have to
keys to move
coordinate
each other's
for
cars. when they
Well, it's
get
a
out.
pain.
yourselves.
People don't like it, but I've seen it work in many cities,
Yeah.
because if you're the same family, then why not? You can
Right.
figure that out.
correct.
It's a little quirky. I don't know if that's a
quirky,
likely
yeah.
candidate in there.
It's but
But it's I
It's
get
just-
it.
yeah.
There's
thinking
things that you can
outside the
do,
box.
but
Bottom line is to come up with different solutions.
right.
So, you know.
Okay.
All right. So with that, can we have a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussions of personnel related to specific persons? And we're also going to have advice of counsel at that time.
So moved.
Second.
On the board, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and with that, we say thank you very much for joining us for this week's work session. We look forward to next week, the December 21st work session. It will, legislative session. It will be our last public meeting of 2016. And hope you can join us at the Birdsall Fagan Courthouse, 7:30 next Wednesday. This meeting is adjourned. All right.